Welcome back, boys and ghouls! Oh, fuck it, it's November, what's the point? Was this a gap year? Normally these Halloween discussions are really easy, cause I just look at whatever Let's Players have been playing and then do that. If anything, the hard part is choosing what to leave out. But not only did a lot of big franchises skip this year, nothing really rose up to take its place. Instead, it feels like there's been a big shift in what games get as popular as old viral horror used to get. What do I mean? Well... Still sucks, but emblematic. So, I think viral horror is broken. I don't mean that it doesn't work anymore, I mean it's fractured into two chunks. For a long time, ever since 2014, when this genre really kicked off with Five Nights at Freddy's, viral horror has been a very concrete template. It usually has a mascot in it, jump scares, simple gameplay with a lot of lore hidden in the background for people to investigate if they so choose. This is FNAF. This is Bendy. This is Hello Neighbor. This is Amanda the Adventurer. This is a lot of games that you can put under the umbrella of viral or mascot horror. Not just formatting, but the archetypal template of a viral horror game has also been used a lot. Blank, but scary. FNAF is pizzeria animatronics, but scary. Bendy is animation, but scary. Amanda is Dora, but scary. Hello is neighbor, but two. These are all pretty universal experiences that apply to a lot of people because a lot of people have experienced them. They're also all coincidentally childhood shared experiences, both to appeal to those who are currently children and those who beat the illness. This is a major factor to the genre's success, but the second major factor was presentation. The backstories to these games took simple stories and made them deeper in an engaging way. Having a story told to you is one thing, but finding bits of a story hidden throughout the world that you find off your own ingenuity is satisfying and makes you feel more involved in the world. The FNAF 3 minigames, or colored tapes in Amanda, are a great way to give the player the option of digging deeper to find out more if they want to. I contend that Scott Cawthon is a decent to bad writer who's very good at dressing up those stories in the most attractive way possible. These core facets, simplistic gameplay, relatable theming, and deeper meaning are the three things that let viral horror explode the way it has. It's digestible, tasty, and filling. All of these things made them great for expansion online. Let's Players could play the games easily, which made them more appealing since they wouldn't have to waste time learning complicated systems. Theorists would be able to endlessly speculate on the open-ended nature of the games. Fan artists could take instantly iconic designs and expand on them with artwork. It would spread like wildfire. On top of that, the fact these games rarely, if ever, had anything actually gory or objectionable in them meant that YouTube would let them by with a kiss on the cheek and a smack on the bum. However, what I noticed is that wildfire kinda burned everything down. That type of viral horror game, the walking simulator with mascots and jump scares, has really been pulled back on in the past year or so. Why is that? Well, for me, the biggest reason has gotta be burnout. Those repeated themes are good for getting people in, but only back when the getting was good. We have seen every permutation of mascot but evil. Pizzeria, cartoon, toy, TV, cereal, it's a tired trope. The same goes for the gameplay. A lot of these games are walking simulators with occasional underbaked mechanics like combat or stealth that only serve to remind you how dull the experience feels. A few games fitting this template existing at once is fine, but when a majority of horror games released follow this template and can't do much besides the bare minimum, people are gonna start getting sick of it. You get your games like Finding Frankie that shake up the formula with a focus on speedrunning, but the contempt that game has for the mascot horror formula is hard to ignore. But I didn't say viral horror is dead. Of course it isn't, it's not F-Zero. Viral horror isn't dead, but it did break somewhere along the way. This fracture, to me, is caused by age. There's a generation that was there when viral horror started, with FNAF and Slender, people around my age, and then there's the people growing up with viral horror. As the old generation gets older, these games that just dip their toes into deeper themes with background details lose their appeal. They start looking for stuff that suits their current interests, their want for a deeper type of game. That's what became one of the two new camps of viral horror: mature viral horror. Mature viral horror deals with much heavier subject matters than the old viral horror games would, and with much more overt theming. Themes of mental health, depression, assault, disability, self-harm, sexuality. These are things that older viral horror games might pay lip service to, but these newer games structure themselves around it. A perfect example of this type of viral horror is Mouthwashing. Mouthwashing is a heavy game that deals with themes of sexual violence, how society protects predators, good people allowing bad things to happen. It's the sort of game I would have loved to talk about if talking about it wouldn't have been like a funeral procession in the middle of a circus after one of the clowns hung himself. Despite barely resembling the viral horror games that came before, Mouthwashing did reach the same level of notoriety that those games did, and garnered a fandom that... yeah. The other side of this is the games for the younger generation, which go so far in the opposite direction that they're baby boo-boo garbage. Where the mature viral horror games are willing to branch out and try different things, these tie themselves to the viral horror formula like somebody's about to bulldoze it to make apartments, and have dumbed down the formula to the degree that it would be impossible to fail. The perfect example for this is Garten of Banban. To me, Garten of Banban was the straw that broke this divide wide open. The community's reaction to Garten of Banban was the test to see if the wider horror landscape would accept or shun something as low quality as this. As you can guess by the nearly double-digit games, they didn't shun it. Banban was a permanent step down, a game that showcased that people's standards weren't really that high. $10 to play red light, green light with walking, talking, colorful shapes. This isn't a game following the viral horror template, this is the viral horror template. If everything before this was the same guy wearing different costumes, Banban is just the guy, no costume, trying to see if the kids revolt as he starts passing out balloons. Its popularity is because it's a frillless experience that easily slides down the throat without so much as a chew. That's why these games need to come out as frequently as they do. They're forgotten about the second you finish playing, but they're popular. They make money, and it set the new standard. You get games with less and less effort put in more and more frequently because the younger audience doesn't have the ability to discern between quality and quantity. They get a lot of it, so it must be good. And instead of pandering to game theory, now these games pander to content mills that try to pump out as much content as possible to capitalize off of children with unattended iPad access, designed as simply as possible so they can be turned into a Minecraft mod, or be gender bent and put into a farting contest with Goth Pomni and Jimmy from Mouthwashing. Any attempt these games make to be more than what they are feels like hollow window dressing. They have nothing to say and no interesting way to say it. Dude, the Dandy's World lore is actually really messed up. Man, the Sprunky lore is really dark. It's just dead kids again, isn't it? It's always dead kids, because dead kids is the last barrier before you get into anything actually upsetting. It wants kids to feel like they're deep into something dark and mysterious, something they shouldn't be watching, when in reality, it's as saccharine as it comes. And then there's the hypermarketization of these games, because ultimately they seek to nickel and dime kids for everything they're worth until their parents start getting fraud calls from the bank. Are these new problems in viral horror? Hell no! I'm very vocally anti-bendy, and it did tons of stuff like this. But ever since Banban, it's like this with everything. I hate using the term, but when a spade's a spade, you gotta call it like it is. They're slop. A continuously churned out string of meaningless gray mush that dare not try something for fear of upsetting a single person whose wallet they might open. The acceptable standard has just been lowered more and more each time until we are where we are now, where Ban Ban 8 is getting very positive ratings from people either too young to have played anything else, or too irony poisoned to buy a game they might actually like. Anyway, who's excited to talk about viral horror now? Woo! Amanda, you bitch. Who the hell releases a horror game on November 6th? The final part of the Amanda trilogy is here, and with any luck, the brakes will start working before we hit that wall. The first Amanda game was very good. The second was not. Either we're trending downwards, or the series is gonna make a miraculous recovery. Well, coffins are in vogue this time of year. Oh wait, they're not, because Halloween was last week! I didn't like this one, guys, I'll be straight with ya. Maybe it's because of the circumstances of it being a week late that pissed me off, but I don't think I liked anything about this. Okay, well, the performances are still good. Amanda and Wooly are both doing a good job, but honestly, this is my least favorite iteration of their relationship. First game had it as Amanda torturing Wooly, like how a sick kid would pick the legs off of an insect. Second game had the mask slipping for both of them to reveal just how much of a kid Amanda really was, and that Wooly was the insensitive jailer. Both of these were good, and I liked how it progressed from the first game to the second. Third game, though? The masks are fully off, and we just have two people who don't like being around each other, arguing in almost every tape. And it's not funny! 2 at least had them be funny when they were fighting, but this game isn't funny. The character interactions, which is where almost all of my enjoyment of the last game came from, are replaced with arguments, a character who only babbles and gargles, and Amanda solo scenes. I think their individual characters are both handled much worse here too. Amanda is the less egregious one since she's way more the focus, but every few tapes you'll have to recalibrate, and doing that has you watching a full-length tape of Amanda telling you a story you just played through. After the carnival tape, she tells you about how she went to the carnival. After the beach tape, she talks about how she went to the beach. She gives you the story in the main tapes, and then tells the exact same story in the second half. I'm sorry, did you think I wasn't paying attention? That's kind of all I can do. Wooly only exists now to be the wrong option in any of the tapes. If Wooly tells you to do something, just do the opposite. That's the answer in almost every puzzle in the game. The possum? I don't care about the possum. I thought I would after his setup in the last game, but I really just don't care. I don't know what it is. They tried making me care. He gets a death scene and everything, but I felt nothing when he died. He's probably Amanda's dad trapped in the tapes, but who cares? The settings appeal has also completely vanished. The first 2 games, despite their overall quality, had perfect ideas for their settings. An attic and a library are the perfect spots for a game themed around VHS tapes and old educational cartoons. They fit the theming, complemented it, and enhanced the experience by emulating the settings you'd actually find these things in. 3, though, swaps it out for an office building with around 3 rooms, counting a hallway, that are visually boring and lack any of the charm the first 2 settings had. Being here fits the game's theme of being really boring, but as a way to get me excited about playing it, it completely fails. There's a later section with a new area, an underground f***ing dungeon where you're surrounded by spooky whisperings and candles and pentagrams and oh my god, they really went all in on it, didn't they? I tried to think of what my problem with this was, and I think the conclusion that I had was, when you pivot to having demons or demonic entities be the explanation for everything, it comes at the expense of your own identity. Before this, I liked the cozy yet unsettling vibes of the first 2 games. It felt unnatural, but was in a natural setting. Going all in on the satanic stuff means you abandon all of that for the bog-standard demonic look that could apply to anything. The brick and mortar, bloody circles, and candles look like they could be from any game. It doesn't feel like it belongs in the same series as what came before. They also do nothing with the specific format of VHS, and anything they try is vapid. The work in progress tape sounded like a cool idea, but when the gimmick is the characters aren't animated and don't move their lips, the first thing you think of isn't impressive. That's ignoring the story stuff, which I totally gave up on. First off, and this might be rude, but the Amanda story is not so complex that I need a recap about what happened that lasts 5 minutes that I didn't click on. I don't know if it plays every time you start a new game, but I didn't click on the tape that gives you a recap and it played it anyway. They have more colored tapes unlike the last game, but frankly there is nothing interesting. You get to see a pre-woolly-eyed Wooly, but it doesn't do much to explain how he got turned into a cartoon character, or how that process works at all. There is a long-as-f*** tape going through security cameras that probably has a lot to say, but motherfucker won't stop saying numbers and letters like they mean anything. I hate this sort of code talk where everybody has to say subject A7QRT or experiment 8008135. How is a minimum wage desk worker going to keep up with these? Wooly pops at the end of the game for no reason. There's a fight with the monsters where they both die. Rebecca doesn't even say thank you after we get her out. Whatever intrigue was there in the first game either goes unaddressed or is snuffed out by how hard they leaned into the demonic stuff. And not even a specific demon. Like, if you had told me Satan was a part of all of this, I at least could have laughed at that, but no, can't even commit to that. Well, with every other aspect of the game f***ing up, I bet the gameplay's really bad too, right? Oh my god, that might actually be the first time you were right. You're usually so positive. I'm writing this immediately after finishing the game, and there was not one puzzle that stuck with me for more than a few seconds after I finished it. They've done away with any of the mental bandwidth you were using to pay attention to when you had to pause the tapes. Now the button not only flashes, but you get a sound effect to go along with it. Not like it matters, the pause button barely gets used in the whole game. More often, the tapes will pause themselves as you run around to do the puzzles. The easy ones will have you doing what Amanda says and ignoring what Wooly says, like in the carnival and beach tapes. And the best puzzle in the game, the rat puzzle where you mix foods based on this chart, was solvable with brute force. I didn't have to think at all. One puzzle during the beach tape, though, has you replacing a light bulb over some statues because one of the statues is wearing glasses and you need to give the glasses to Amanda, and the light bulb that you need to replace is on a table surrounded by loads of other clutter that in no way stands out. The worst puzzle was the very first one in the game in this worthless little pregame section. You have to flip switches corresponding to pods that have items Amanda points out in the tape. The switches aren't the ones behind the pods, they're the ones connected by the wires on the ground. Ignoring that later on they are directly behind their associated pods, fine, this one's on me. But the fact that failing requires you to restart the entire game, needing to get past about 3 cutscenes, 2 unskippable, is unforgivable. Any fun ideas for puzzles have clearly been used up, as at this point the formula has been worn thin. There are no clever or remarkable puzzles in this game. The ones from the original game that utilize the gimmick well, and the few from 2 that carried that on, are nowhere in this game. Just off the top of my head, you could have fast-forwarding and rewinding to make something decay quicker or bring it back to life. Record over parts of a tape to stop something bad from happening. Mute the volume to sneak past a monster. If you're going to base the whole series around TV and VHS tapes, use the format to your advantage with what's inherent to that format. Instead, it's just gotten by on that single pause button while barely having anything to do with it in the first place. I waited an extra week for this. If Amanda 2 was as bad as I expected Amanda 1 to be, Amanda 3 is even worse. I didn't enjoy any part of this game. I think every single bit was a step down from 2 and a fucking skydive down from 1. The settings, the puzzles, the story, every bit of it was unfun. I know Mangled Maw can make something good. They already did in the same series. Hearing this might be the end of Amanda, though, is a relief, just because it means I don't have to doubt my enjoyment of that first game anymore. Hey, so, what was up with the meat guy? What was his story? Did he represent, like, danger, stranger danger or something? What happened to him? See what I'm talking about? This is one of my best examples for the year, and there isn't a mascot in sight. Well, there's this guy, but he's not getting on a Fontacan. Maybe a poster, though. No, I'm Not a Human is a game by Tryoskaz, a Russian indie team of 5 that was first released in the VHS demo pack in 2024, before getting a demo and full release this year. The game follows us, the cool dude, as the sun has had enough. We've been freeloading off of it for energy and killing ants for years, and how do we pay it back? This indignation was enough. And the sun turned up the heat, so now it was impossible to go outside during the day, without being turned into a pile of ash. The only safe travel is now at night, and to keep alive, people are encouraged to group up and stick together. That's where the meat of the game really starts. Once the sun explodes and everything kicks off, you get 2 phases. Nighttime has you held up near your door, answering it whenever you hear a knock. You meet whoever's outside and ask them a few questions before deciding whether or not to let them in to join your group, or turn them away. Why would you want to turn somebody away? You know, besides looking weird.
You simply must let me in, for in a past life I was a most prized hog.
When the sun exploded, a group of monsters called visitors clawed their way out of the ground and are killing people. The catch is that they're able to perfectly emulate real humans. Appearances, voices, even perfectly formed memories. If you think you're just gonna be turning away anybody who looks weird, tough luck, everybody looks weird. The game melds a photorealistic style with disturbing and exaggerated morphing that makes everybody look off to some degree. Faces are too long, too wide, features distorted and warped. This was a very intentional choice because it plays on the innate biases that everybody has. Everybody judges people based on appearances. You don't want to admit it, but you do it. No, I'm Not a Human knows that and uses its unique art style to ask you to help out weird, off-putting people. It asks you to sympathize with these people. They're normal just like you. Or maybe they're a murderous monster. You won't know until you let them in. And there's a difference between leaving somebody out to die and keeping a dangerous invader from getting into your house. It even makes you sympathize with potential visitors because even when you have them pegged, they're not hostile. They're scared and almost unaware of their true nature. It makes you wonder if the visitors are even evil by choice or if it's some sort of weird reflex. I think a lot of the game's messaging revolves around that idea. How do you treat somebody who doesn't fit a societal norm like looking right? Do you treat them as a threat? Or do you treat them as a human? It's an idea that I think fits horror perfectly, and the game delivers on well. I mean, except for the ending where you survive with a few visitors inside your house because no matter what or how close you got to them, they'll still rip you to shreds, but it's a good idea. You choose whether or not to let around 3 people in every night, and then go to bed. The daytime phase, the second one, is when you clean up your messes. You get to walk around your house and talk to the various people you let in during the previous nights. Learn a little bit more about them, and, more importantly, test them to see if they're visitors. Check their teeth, their nails, their eyes, their earbug count. Anything not up to snuff gets snuffed. You can't test to your heart's content, though, because you have a limited amount of actions you can take each day that run out fast. Multiple tests might not be possible if you have multiple people in the house. What's more is that while certain people are tagged to always be visitors or always be humans, a lion's share of the cast that you can run into is set to be either one. There's very few characters you can trust no matter how many times you play the game. But, why let anybody into the house in the first place? What's so bad out there that I can't just hole up in here with my gun and DoorDash and wait for the sun to calm down? Every few nights, this special visitor will arrive. He can't be bargained with, killed, Talked down? Nothing. All you can do is tell them the truth. Are you alone? Visitors only attack solitary people, and will leave groups alone. So if you have nobody else in your house, he'll enter and kill you. As well, when the FEMA government task force gets put together and comes by every few nights to check on you, you have to give up survivors for them to test on. These two turn your survivors into a check, needing enough to keep away the pale visitor and getting drained by FEMA. Mix in the tension of actually figuring out who's a monster and who's not, and keeping the real survivors alive, and you get a situation where stress is the biggest killer in the game. This makes up all of the gameplay. You're either checking for visitors, letting in more visitors to check because things got boring, or looking out your window, or boarding up your window. The thing that makes the game such an enjoyable experience is that it's an experience that breaks you down bit by bit. The world is going to hell, but you are never directly involved in any of it. You just stay holed up in your house, hearing about it on the news. The sunlight's so intense, you can't even look out the windows during the day to see what's going on. You get updates on how to spot the visitors, but their tells are so common and explainable, especially given the circumstances, that surefire methods become untrustworthy. Are you so certain that this person is a monster who needs to be shot in the face because they have good dental hygiene? Plenty of characters, visitors or not, have justification for their tells. And you have to decide if somebody having twitchy eyes is enough to put them in the ground because you think they came out of it. A mountain man would have dirty fingernails. A lady who just went to the dentist would have nice teeth. Somebody having a bug crawl out of their ear might be a pretty definitive choice, sure, but everything else can be explained. But you often have to just go with your gut, trying to make a decision that not only might lose you a resource, but also potentially kill a human being. The conversations you can have with the various people you house show a great degree of writing. Every one of them, be they human or not, feel fully formed with lives, worries, philosophies, struggles, loved ones. There's no such thing as a one-note character in this game. This guy isn't just tall, he has an abrasive personality, a rational thought pattern, and waxes poetic. This guy isn't just really cold, he's emotionally stunted and desperate for a connection he can't have. This guy isn't just a belligerent drunk, he suffers from PTSD after the death of his wife and is spiraling out of control. One of these people is also a visitor. Can you guess who? Of course you can't, because just by how they talk, you would never guess. It creates this weird tension of getting to know somebody, hearing about their lives, dropping your guard until one test reveals they were the visitor killing people the entire time. There's a betrayal in that, feeling close to these characters only to have the knife twist in your back. I think that's a credit to the writing, though, that it does make you care. You care about the survivors you bring in, and you care about what happens to them. If they get killed by a visitor, you feel incensed at yourself for failing them. If they get taken by FEMA, you feel a growing resentment towards this task force that never helps you and only makes your life worse. FEMA demands total cooperation and subjugation at the cost of human life, and in return can't even combat the threat they were created to fight. Man, with all of this, the game must be perfect, right? Well, I want to say nothing bad about this game, but in the name of fairness, I do want to point out its flaws. The biggest one is that the game takes place over 2 weeks, meaning 14 nights, meaning 14 loops. FEMA stops showing up around the 10th night, and the Pale Visitor the night after that. After they stop showing up, the last 3 days get kinda monotonous. It reveals a lack of depth in the gameplay itself, which is a pretty damning flaw. This is not a game like Papers, Please, where time is against you and you have a load of mechanics to juggle. Unlike that game, time here is only represented by energy, meaning you have loads of time to think about your next course of action, replacing the crushing weight of split-second decisions with the dread of having to wait to see if you made the wrong choice. What it also loses, though, is a more frantic nature, as there isn't any real pressure during the daytime segments. You're free to walk around the house and check people at your leisure, only needing to keep up your energy to do so. And there are plenty of ways to increase your energy. There are consumables in the kitchen that give you added effects, like increasing energy, but I'll be honest, I kinda forgot this mechanic existed because I never really needed it. Keeping around known humans means that your pool of potential visitors shrinks, and you can test them more rigorously, which will always tell you what you need to know. The only consumable that really matters is cat food if you let in the visitor with a cat, because the cat is completely broken. Giving the cat food stops any deaths during the night, and makes it so visitors can't actually kill anybody. The biggest issue with the gameplay, though, is that the game wants to be played several times. There are 10 total endings in the game, which means that you're going to be doing the loop upwards of 140 times. The gameplay is not deep enough to make me want to play through it multiple times. There's a limited amount of characters, with the only thing changing being whether they're a visitor or not. Their stories will be repeated run after run, which leads to you just ignoring my favorite part of the game to get to testing. I think the strength of the game is on that first playthrough and the story you develop for yourself while playing, just like Papers, Please. In my first playthrough, a little girl came to my house, and I was tasked with keeping her safe. First night she stays, FEMA comes by and takes her. You never get to see her again, and there's no way to get her back. The feeling of powerlessness after that happened was crippling, and I couldn't believe just how fast everything changed. It was really effective, but will it be effective if it happens again, and again, and again, and again, and again? There are new characters planned to be added, but really the amount of characters was never my problem. The amount of stuff to do is what I actually take umbrage with. That said, though, just because I think the game could be better doesn't mean I don't like what's already there. I think No, I'm Not a Human is a good horror game. It sets out to create an oppressive, unrelentingly grim experience, and succeeds. I think its strongest aspects are the ones it puts front and center. I think its writing is top class. I think its visuals are unnerving and ideas fascinating. The music's great, there's a lot to love. I wish there was a little more gameplay attached to it all, but that's not a deal breaker. My name is Jackie, and I'm fucking backy. I know, guy who doesn't talk about FNAF sure does talk about FNAF every single year. Didn't I tell you we were running late this year? Last year, I begrudgingly played Into the Pit, a game based on the FNAF books. I know, I've been refreshing too, but lo and behold, it actually turned out to be my favorite FNAF game so far. I was excited to see if there would be more games like this from the same studio, and was let down when I found out the next game would be a follow-up to the Security Breach formula. That game stinks like doo-doo, and has finally gotten clean pants on, but those aren't stains that wash out easy. I wasn't excited going in, and frankly it seems like not a lot of other people were too. Secrets of the Mimic, which is joining Poppy's Playtime and My Hero Macadamia as things I refuse to pronounce correctly because apparently the Mimic only has one secret, it wasn't making waves the way FNAF used to. Before, when a new FNAF game was coming out, even Security Breach, it was an all-hands-on-deck affair. Everybody knew it, and everybody was a part of it. Fan art would be dropping the second we got new designs, theories would be made about every pixel that came out, and that hype would increase excitement tenfold. This time, there was nothing. This game was barely a blip on the radar. When do you think Secrets of the Mimic came out? Really, I don't think a lot of people even know it came out. This game came out back in June. Was it big in the FNAF scene? Of course it is. But FNAF used to be an internet-wide event, and nobody cared about Secrets of the Mimic. If you see FNAF fan content out there now, it's either for the movies, Security Breach, or the classic stuff. That one song probably has more notoriety than the game it's about. So when everything started collapsing in on itself and I had to play another FNAF game, I didn't have high expectations. Honestly, I didn't expect to like this game going in. Bad attitude to have, but the third time you put your hand on the hot skillet, you kinda know what's coming. You play as Arnold, alright, fuck I can't do this. You didn't tell me Arnold was gonna be here. Arnold works for Fazbear Entertainment, who's sending him to Murray's Costume Manor, a manufacturer who makes the actual animatronics that Fazbear Entertainment uses in its restaurants. The headwin Edwin, though, isn't answering calls, causing Fazbear to throw expendable employees at the place to try to get the plans for all the stuff Fazbear is owed. With the staff whittled down to just Arnold and the guy sending people to die, Arnold is up next and we go to collect. Off the bat, 5 Nights at Freddy's, 1 Night at Edwin's. If the Mimic doesn't have any secrets, I'm suing. The most important thing to know going in is that this takes place at the very beginning of the FNAF timeline. That wretched little thing. Might sound confusing, but really I couldn't ask for more. Means the amount of stuff it has to connect to is minimal. The story itself is relatively self-contained. I was able to enjoy it mainly as a standalone game without having to know anything about the books or games it relates to. It's a simple point A to point B sort of game with half a dozen subheadings whenever a new door you can't open gets in your way. The side story you can get with Edwin and his son, whose name escapes me right now, is also engaging. For a story where you never meet any of the characters involved, it managed to keep my attention thanks to good voice acting and a direct effect on gameplay. You wonder how this hellhole of a factory got this way. These journal entries and voice logs give you the explanation. Speaking of voices, in fact, I'd say my favorite part of the game, as a longtime fan of 5 Nights at Freddy's, was hearing the cheery Fazbear corporate voice guy. I'm sure he has a name and a favorite umbrella brand in the book, but I can't read! We've only ever heard him reading from a Fazbear script or fast-talking through corporate speak, so to hear this guy be so dry, droll, and outwardly sleazy was a really cool twist. I like that the voice for Fazbear, that we all know, represents the company he works for. Outwardly warm and inviting, but really couldn't care less about anything but the bottom line. A lot of my hesitation for the game came from how it would tie itself into the series, and it turned out to not be so bad. And if you do want those lore connections, they're in there for you. That was my main worry because the pre-release material didn't give me much more to go off of besides more security breach. In all honesty, that is, the base gameplay is very similar to Security Breach and other horror games like Bendy. You get a big, scary guy running around a maze-like map who kills you in one hit. You can distract him, hide from him, and eventually escape, but not before doing a little puzzling. This is a gameplay style I do not like. I think it's boring and you spend way more time not playing the game than you do doing something. And if your game has me sitting in one spot doing nothing for a lion's share of the time, I'm not gonna like it. Which is what made me take a step back about midway through Secrets of the Mimic when I realized I don't hate this. I was actually enjoying my time going through the game and didn't feel overly negative. Was I having my moments? Sure, but nothing that was derailing my experience. How did that work? Well, I think the biggest factor in my enjoyment of the gameplay is that the game isn't just its gameplay. Describing a game like I just did is like describing food as its caloric value. You don't get the tastes or textures. That simple gameplay can be gussied up in the right ways to make it appealing. Games like Security Breach and Bendy fail to do that, and Secrets of the Mimic doesn't. I'll keep drawing comparisons to Security Breach only because I think this game is a better version of Security Breach, and it helps to put into context what Mimic does better. Bar none, the biggest improvement is the setting. Security Breach did away with any of the dilapidated feeling of the original series and replaced it with extremely polished plastics and gloss. I found the Pizzaplex to be the furthest thing from scary as a setting, and that design disdain extended to the animatronics. The Glamrocks don't even try to be scary. They get a little better in their ruined forms, but until you get to those, they're in no way visually appealing as scary monsters. I've said this for a long time, but you could really convince me they were trying to shoot for hot instead of scary with their base designs. Mimic replaces the mall setting with the destroyed remains of an animatronic factory, which makes for a much more striking environment. It still has the fantastical nature of the Pizzaplex, but actually has some threatening elements to it. It's old. Nobody works there anymore. It gets worse as the night goes on, and it makes sense why there'd be killer animatronics running around. I also like the theming of the areas more than in Security Breach. Visiting an old-timey carnival and animatronic hospital was way more interesting to me. It broke up the theming in reasonable ways. The animatronics are also finally back to a design ethos that we haven't seen since the very early games. They don't go too far into creepy, like the Withereds or Nightmares, or too far into cute, like the Toys and Glamrocks. They're unsettling to look at like an actual animatronic is. Unmoving faces, exaggerated features, chipped paint, and exposed mechanical bits. These are the first designs in a long time that I'd actually consider good by the same standard of the best of the series. The Mimic himself is the best for this in how his design complements the gameplay, which it's finally time to talk about. The Mimic is the main, consistent enemy of the game. Your Nemesis from Resident Evil 3 or T-Rex from Dino Crisis. Every other animatronic you only meet once, and they're the boss of their associated area, with you spending the whole time running from them before turning the tables. What's the application for him being able to do this? Mimic, meanwhile, will show up whenever he feels like it, and his gimmick is that he can crawl inside any of the suits lying around to surprise you. Sounds simple, but the first room you see him in is lousy with suits, and in the next encounter, they're everywhere. He only appears in rooms with lots of suits, which means you're never gonna know which one he's in. And if you die, he'll change positions and come out from a different suit in a different location. It's a really clever idea. It makes his appearances way more exciting since you don't know what he'll look like, where he'll be, or what he's going to look like next. His actual strategy isn't much more than running at you when he sees you, but the game at least smartens up the animatronics a bit and lets them remember if they just saw you run into a locker 1 second ago. Suck it, Bendy! As for the other animatronics, they range. As in the nurse is good and the rest are kinda bad. The nurse's initial section where she's on rails was really cool. I liked all the different tells you could use to keep track of her, like visuals, sounds, and the light. Normally sound design takes center stage with FNAF, and it's good in this one, but I think the use of lighting should get a special mention. Multiple different parts of the game use light as a way to keep an eye on animatronics while staying mobile and out of their line of sight, and it allows for better environmental design to accommodate it. The hunter section with the nurse is also the best design of all the hunter areas in the game, with chains hanging around to alert her if you walk into them, air vents to crawl through to get around faster, but also doors only she can use, which means she always has an advantage. The last chase section has some really annoying view cones, which made me restart the segment over and over, but it wasn't enough for me to not think this was the best stretch of the game. Jackie is fine. She's the first animatronic you meet, and she's just got a few chase sections without much else going on, like puzzles or minigames. It at least has some really cool visuals, like her arms extending out past you as she chases you, and seeing her crash into walls. Not engaging, but at least fun. Also, why is she on the cover? She doesn't have a secret cannon, she's not a bomb thief, she has no clown power, you put a Goomba on the cover. Music Man's section was fun for the very first loop, but then you have to play 2 more of the same game and run past him and do a pipe puzzle 3 more times and the shine is firmly off the apple. The tension's completely gone once you learn the trick to get past him because that's the only way to get past him. There's no way to make it go quicker, you're gonna have to wait in every single locker until he looks away. The hand controls too, they're cute, but god, they're way too jittery sometimes. Precise motion with these Jurassic Park survivor hands is not easy. The Mimic's dedicated section afterwards in the Mascot graveyard is maybe my favorite setting in any FNAF game. And I know I was born without a brain, but god, I was stuck on this section for a long time because I just kept missing one of the arms you had to collect. Getting into a Springlock suit is cool, and the actual funniest joke in a FNAF game is here. but the section at the end where you're hitting targets with your animatronic arm is the most inane part of the game. There is no threat. There is no danger. You just keep shooting at targets for a long time. Not much happens after that until the final segment with the white tiger. And the game starts pissing, fucking gushing goodwill. I hated this part. I understood it immediately. Move between the lights, don't get stuck in the dark, don't touch the tiger. I think the tiger is cool. I like having an animatronic with straight-up ghost powers a la Golden Freddy. The dark was too dark, and I couldn't see where I was going. Oftentimes I'd run to the only available light, the light would go out, and I'd die with no recourse. I'd follow down a super long path and then get to the very end, and the game decides I spent a little too long in the dark and kills me with the checkpoint in view. Once the game made sure that ever-enticing refund was well out of grasp, I got to continue and it didn't get better. Now with the source of light on you, the tiger goes from way too strong to a joke. All you have to do is avoid walking into his arms as you rummage around a pitch-dark maze with a secret exit. And then a few solid minutes of walking around identical dark environments with no sense of direction or purpose that you end by sheer luck. When they asked me to hand over the data diver and get the bad ending, it wasn't a question for me, I wanted out. My overall thoughts on Secrets of the Mimic are mixed. I think it's an undeniable step up from Security Breach, it does a lot of what that game did poorly well, and is a competent enough experience to make for a fun game. I'll say it does a gameplay style I don't like about as well as you could, but really drops the ball at what's supposed to be the climax. It don't even come close to polishing Into the Pit's boots, but it's good they're improving. I'm probably done playing through these though, since the gameplay is just not for me at all, and it probably colored a lot of my opinions about it. Now they gotta work on making the movies good, cause the first one sucked. Jack's choice this year wasn't that hard, since I've been waiting to talk about this game since last Halloween. Dissolution ST is the expanded version / prequel to the 2021 game Dissolution by Dissolution Dev. He delivered everything he promised. Dissolution ST has been on my radar ever since I saw a tweet from a friend of the developer saying it was out, but last Halloween was such a rush I would have never had time to play it in time for that one. Take notes, Amanda! Plus, even if I had the time, if I didn't have a year to get my thoughts together on Dissolution, I wouldn't have known what to say. Dissolution is a one-of-one, completely unique experience as long as you've never played the one game it's very directly based on. Dissolution's story is best summed up as a shrug. You get a goal at the beginning of the game from your partner Melpomene to collect objects that bring people happiness in order to build a tower, but you'd have to be a real sick puppy to look around at all this and say, no explanation is needed. While I definitely have my own notes about what I think is going on, this is a game that really beckons the player to draw their own conclusion out about what's going on, who to trust, who to talk to, and what to do. You don't get to choose where to go, though, so Dissolution is heavily based on LSD Dream Emulator, the PS1 game where every time you touch something, you're reminded that hell is real. While Dissolution is kinder about it, and limits its warps to touching different doors and talking to specific NPCs, it's still going to be sending you to over 100 different, unique locations. There are some repeated themes, but you'll often go about a dozen rooms before seeing one that you've ever seen before. Same goes for the people you meet in those rooms. There are hundreds of different characters to meet across your journey, ranging from metallic alien UFOs, abstract collections of orbs, and anime girls. Heads up, that doesn't narrow down just how many anime girls are in this game. Those are just the normal ones, though. Certain NPCs will trigger their own cutscenes rendered in authentic PS1 full-motion video. These guys are the ones that can transport you to different levels, and often have much deeper stories to tell than the ordinary creatures you find. I was surprised to learn that these aren't one-off encounters either. If you meet back up with the same character in a new room, they'll continue the conversation you were having before, be they special or not. Some are unnerving, but others are affable, kind, or even helpful. You really only know what you're in for if you take the time to talk to them. It lets you make a mental list of which characters to meet back up with and which to avoid. In the labyrinth you find yourself in, getting to see a familiar face is a very welcome comfort. Oh, thank God, it's no arms, no legs mask guy. This guy's rock solid. Stepping back a bit to talk about the FMV for a second, I really can't heap enough praise onto it. Perfectly emulating the feel of an old game in such a convincing way is harder than it looks. You can usually tell some way to see that these animations are made in a more modern fashion, but you could easily pass this off as the real deal. The attention to detail is insane. I really believed that was a clown. The game gives you the option at the beginning to turn combat on or off, and, well, it's probably bad of me not getting the whole scope of the game. I haven't played with combat on yet. Frankly, the only negative I've seen in reviews of this game online is that they wish they started with Pacifist because the combat isn't very good. If I have a chance to hedge my bets towards having a good time playing, I'm gonna take it. Turning off the combat means that the game is just walking around these surreal environments, trying to find your way to the next one in search of the items you need to build the tower. If you think this makes it a quick get-in and get-out adventure, you're out of luck, since the game doesn't have much interest with letting you go. For reference, the run I recorded went on for about 2 hours. In that time, I found one of the 18 collectibles you need to finish the game. Took about an hour to realize you could be hurt in this game, and was convinced for the longest time I was never going to find even one collectible. Dissolution wants you to find its secrets, it wants to be understood, but make no mistake, it doesn't want to make it easy. You have to dedicate a lot of time to unearthing everything in the game, but that's a good thing. It makes you feel like you're one of the characters, complaining about being trapped for all eternity and walking endless paths. It's no surprise that in my playthrough, I quickly found out we were trapped in hell. A game with such a bold identity like this, though, with so much of its own style and voice, is one I'm happy to be trapped in. The game is artistically in a league of its own, for better and worse. Floors bounce between eye-melting overstimulation with inverted shadows and harsh colors, to muted and decrepit hellscapes with nothing to offer but cold indifference. The game is a hallway with doors along either side, and they either go to a rave or a sensory deprivation tank, and very, very rarely, you'll get a respite in the form of a dancing rat. Also, the music is unbelievable. There are so many different tracks used in the game, and just like the environments, you'll go from hearing the sort of music so pretty they used to write plays about it, to a manic grandfather falling down the stairs to chase away trick-or-treaters. Happy Halloween, by the way. The game mixes so many different styles into one, with a heavy dosage of old internet, with the expansive, empty 3D spaces, simple 3D models made of shapes, ads plastered all over the wall. Something about primitive modeling sold the idea of this being Naraka in a way I never expected. Some of the designs you'll run into are so cute that you might not be prepared for when the game starts to turn up the scares. I was actually nervous about covering this as a horror game, since that's not how the game markets itself or how a lot of people interpret it. Truthfully, I didn't even know if I would consider it an out-and-out horror game after my playthrough, but it's definitely unnerving. For every convenience store or train station you visit with pleasant ambiance, you'll get an industrial nightmare filled with humans in cages, boneyards, bleeding face walls, and this goddamn room. Get me the hell out of here! Oh wow, this is actually worse. I didn't think it could get worse. While it doesn't go for jump scares or anything explicitly scary, you're going to dread every time you need to open a door because there's no way of knowing what's next. The game is completely randomized. Every door will take you to a random floor, and with so many options, you're going to feel hopelessly lost. Even though the journey is hard and it's gonna feel pointless for a long time and you're gonna want to give up, you might meet a bookworm who's made up of a whole 8 spheres, or the big cheese, Or that little brat that cheated you out of all your triple triad cards. Yeah, when I was talking about this game being based on one in particular, I was actually talking about Final Fantasy VIII. This game's got triple triad in it. As much as I would love to talk about Dissolution ST to no end, I also admit that I've barely scratched the surface. Taking this as a full overview of the game when I haven't even come close to seeing a fraction of what it's hiding is ridiculous. And if you play it, you're gonna have completely different stuff than me. Stuff I've probably never seen. I have loads more stuff to get through before I get an idea of even half of the breadth of the game, but I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what it's gonna pull, who I get to meet, what weird new things will happen, what touching emotional beats I'll be put through. I'm excited for it all. Also, for those worried that the game might be lol XD random, I assure you that there is a meaning to this. Like how all of hell seems to be incredibly industrialized. I think that Dissolution devs should be proud of just what a wonderful game they've made, and how it managed to capture my attention and never let it go. Other games I recommend, but you need to play Dissolution ST. Make sure to feed your daughter! Barkeep, get my little dude here 2 scary pictures.